April 3rd, 2016. The screen cuts to black. Over 18 million viewers stare at their televisions in breathless silence. It is the season 6 finale of the biggest phenomenon on cable television. A charismatic new villain has just stepped out of an RV, holding a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. He plays a sadistic game of eeny, meeny, miny, moe with a lineup of beloved, terrified characters. He swings the bat. The camera switches to a dizzying point of view shot. Blood drips down the lens. The audio fills with the sickening crunch of a skull. And then, nothing. Roll credits. Fans expected a resolution. Instead, AMC told them to wait 6 agonizing months to find out who had just died. The backlash was instantaneous. Yet while social media exploded with rage, executives at AMC popped champagne. To them, the cliffhanger wasn't a narrative cheat. It was a calculated mechanism for audience retention. 6 months later, 17 million people tuned in for the answer. They watched a foundational character get beaten to death. In a sequence so relentlessly bleak, it left audiences physically nauseous. And then, something rare in modern television happened. The viewers turned off their screens, and they never came back. Within a few seasons, viewership for this cultural juggernaut collapsed, from 17 million to under 5 million. A multi-billion-dollar franchise was suddenly bleeding out, a victim of its own hubris. But this wasn't a single creative misstep. It was the terminal symptom of a deeper corporate disease. This is the story of AMC Networks, a company that captured lightning in a bottle 3 distinct times, built the greatest lineup of prestige television in modern history, and then, through a series of ruthless financial decisions and catastrophic strategic blunders, systematically dismantled its own empire. To understand the collapse, you must understand the peak. In the early 2000s, AMC stood for American Movie Classics. It was a dusty basic cable channel, known for broadcasting edited black and white films to retirees. HBO owned prestige television. FX was the edgy alternative. AMC was just a waiting room. But then came a shift that defied industry logic. In 2007, they took a financial gamble on a script about a 1960s advertising executive that every major network had rejected. That show didn't just win 4 consecutive Emmy Awards. It changed global fashion, it influenced corporate culture, and it redefined the boundaries of character study on television. A year later, they picked up another script that HBO, Showtime, and FX had notoriously passed on. A story about a mild-mannered high school chemistry teacher, diagnosed with terminal cancer, who turns to manufacturing meth. The protagonist's terrifying transformation into a calculating drug kingpin became a masterclass in narrative tension, cementing the show as arguably the greatest television drama ever produced. Then, in 2010, they launched a cinematic, character-driven show about a zombie apocalypse. It shattered basic cable records, eventually becoming the most-watched scripted series on television, routinely beating broadcast giants like NBC and CBS. For a brief window, AMC was untouchable. They were the kingmakers of global pop culture. But behind the scenes, executives were making a fatal miscalculation. They started believing the AMC logo, not the singular genius of their creators, was the secret sauce. And they began running their creative powerhouse like a discount manufacturing plant. The first real cracks appeared at the exact moment their zombie franchise became a global phenomenon. Frank Darabont, the Oscar-nominated director, was the visionary who developed the black and white comic book into a television masterpiece. He wrote and directed the pilot, establishing the gritty tone that hooked millions. AMC's reward for this defining success: they slashed the budget for season 2. Despite the show generating massive advertising revenue, executives demanded double the episodes on a fraction of the budget, confining the apocalypse to a single, isolated farm to save on location costs. When Darabont fought fiercely to protect the visual quality and narrative integrity of his show, AMC didn't compromise. They fired him. Midway through production, the creator was escorted off his own set. It was a jarring corporate power play, and it wasn't just cruel. It was a financial disaster. Darabont immediately sued. The legal battle dragged on for over a decade, pulling the curtain back on Hollywood accounting and corporate greed. Finally, in 2021, AMC was forced into a corner and settled. paying Darabont and his agency a staggering $200 million. They tried to save pennies on zombie makeup, and ended up writing one of the biggest settlement checks in entertainment history. But this wasn't an isolated incident. It was their operational philosophy. Across the lot, in their prestige drama division, the network was running the exact same playbook. By 2011, their 1960s advertising drama was the crown jewel of the AMC brand. But executives wanted more commercial time to maximize short-term profits. They demanded the show's creator cut 2 full minutes of narrative content from every episode to squeeze in extra advertisements, and permanently cut 2 regular cast members to lower payroll. The creator, an uncompromising perfectionist, flatly refused to butcher his narrative for detergent commercials. The resulting standoff paralyzed the network. The dispute dragged out in the press, delaying the premiere of the 5th season by an agonizing 17 months. AMC willingly risked alienating a highly dedicated, affluent audience, just to marginally pad quarterly ad revenue, but squeezing pennies from zombies and ad men was nothing compared to the gamble they took with their defining masterpiece. By its 3rd season, their show about the meth-cooking chemistry teacher was a critical darling, but its live ratings hadn't yet exploded. The story of Walter White's descent into darkness was precisely mapped out, and the showrunner needed a specific number of episodes to execute the psychological decay of his main character. AMC, looking strictly at the spreadsheets, balked. For the 4th season, executives proposed drastically cutting the episode order to save money, suggesting a truncated run of 6 to 8 episodes, essentially crippling the momentum of television's greatest villain origin story. They pushed so aggressively and were so unwilling to pay the studio that the creators team did the unthinkable. They quietly took meetings with other networks. They went directly to FX, the very network that had originally passed on the pilot, and asked if they wanted to buy the rights to broadcast the final, explosive chapters of the story. Think about what that actually means. AMC was so obsessed with unit economics that they were days away from handing the climax of the decade's greatest show to a direct competitor. Ultimately, AMC panicked and struck a desperate last-minute deal to keep the show, but the permanent damage in the creative community was done. Hollywood showrunners learned a clear lesson. AMC will squeeze you for every dime, even if you hand them a multi-billion-dollar cultural phenomenon. While AMC was fighting vicious wars with its own creators, a much larger, existential threat was quietly looming. A DVD by mail rental company called Netflix was aggressively pivoting to streaming. In the early 2000s, AMC executives saw an opportunity for what they believed was easy money. Netflix was willing to pay tens of millions of dollars for the syndication rights to stream past seasons of AMC's hits. To AMC's leadership, this looked like genius. They were getting paid twice for the exact same content. Wall Street applauded the massive influx of licensing revenue. At first, the strategy worked beautifully. The Netflix effect allowed millions of new viewers to binge early seasons of AMC's serialized dramas, leading to record-breaking live viewership for the final seasons broadcast on cable. But AMC didn't realize they were building a digital Trojan horse by licensing their most addictive content to Netflix. AMC trained an entire generation of consumers that they didn't need a cable subscription. Why pay for a bundled package filled with useless channels when the best shows in the world eventually end up on a seamless app for $9 a month? AMC traded the long-term future of their business model for short-term licensing checks. They weaponized their own assets to build Netflix's massive subscriber base. Netflix used AMC's brilliant characters to hook global audiences, then used those subscription dollars to fund their own original content. AMC handed the keys to the kingdom to the exact technology company that would soon render cable television obsolete. By the time AMC executives woke up to the streaming wars, the battle was already lost. In late 2020, years after Netflix, Hulu, Prime Video, Disney, and HBO had established total global dominance, AMC finally launched its own standalone premium streaming service, AMC+. It was a masterclass in how not to launch a digital product. First, the technology was embarrassingly underdeveloped. The application was notoriously buggy, prone to crashing during peak hours, lacked basic modern features like user profiles, and offered a clunky interface that felt a decade out of date. But the technology wasn't the biggest problem. The content library was a ghost town because AMC had spent the last 10 years selling off the exclusive streaming rights to their biggest hits for quick cash. AMC Plus launched without exclusive access to its own legacy, You wanted to watch the greatest meth kingpin story ever told? Locked on Netflix. You wanted to watch the golden seasons of their zombie epic? Locked on Netflix. Imagine a major studio launching a streaming service, but legally not being allowed to stream their defining cinematic universes. That was AMC Plus. They asked modern consumers to pay a premium monthly fee for a service that didn't hold the complete catalogs of the very franchises that defined the network, instead of an essential library of prestige television. Subscribers got a fragmented assortment of spin-offs, obscure international programming, and a bundled mess of secondary niche channels. In an ecosystem suffering from subscription fatigue, AMC Plus offered zero compelling reasons to exist. It arrived far too late, it was technically broken, and it was hollowed out by their own past short-sightedness. How does a network with a Midas touch lose its grip on the entire industry? It comes down to three fatal errors in corporate judgment. First, they confuse the platform with the product. AMC leadership convinced themselves that the network's brand was the draw, not the stories themselves. Firing visionary directors and nickel-and-diming perfectionist writers proved that executives valued profit margins over creative integrity. They fail to understand that prestige television is a fragile ecosystem built entirely on mutual trust between the network and the artist. Second, they cynically disrespected their own audience. That Season 6 cliffhanger remains one of the most arrogant television decisions of the modern era. It was an artificial, emotionally manipulative tactic designed by committee to guarantee ratings. But audiences are not stupid. They recognize when a narrative is sacrificed for a marketing gimmick. The brutal resolution permanently broke the psychological contract between the show and its fans. The audience felt punished, not entertained. And the resulting mass exodus proved that once a brand breaks that trust, no amount of aggressive marketing can win it back. Third, they mortgage their future for short-term liquidity. The decision to blindly syndicate their defining content to a burgeoning tech platform was arguably the most short-sighted move in modern entertainment history. They eagerly took the quick payout, failing to recognize the digital paradigm shift. They fed their best ammunition directly to the competitor, ensuring that when they were finally forced onto the streaming battlefield, their guns were entirely empty. Today, AMC Networks exists as a shadow of its former glory. Their stock price has plummeted. Their traditional cable revenues are in terminal decline as cord-cutting accelerates. They are now reliant on an endlessly diluting universe of zombie spin-offs, desperately trying to squeeze the last drops of blood from a cultural stone they cracked nearly a decade ago. The true tragedy of AMC is that they achieved the impossible. In an industry where a single defining hit is a statistical miracle, they created a trinity of masterpieces that redefined global pop culture. They had the entertainment world in the palm of their hands, but this is the brutal lesson of their collapse. You can analyze the demographic data, you can optimize the advertising minutes per hour, you can ruthlessly negotiate production contracts and sell your licensing rights to the highest bidder on Wall Street, but you cannot spreadsheet your way into the hearts of an audience. When a network forgets that its lasting value lies in the art it facilitates and the respect it shows its audience, the downfall isn't just probable, it's inevitable. For over a decade, AMC broadcast profound stories telling us that our choices have inescapable consequences. Whether it was a slick ad man running from his hollow past, a brilliant chemistry teacher destroying his soul to build an empire, or survivors losing their humanity in a desolate wasteland, it turns out the executives at AMC were the only ones who forgot to watch their own shows